Welcome to the App Advisory Show, your fortnightly dose of all things cloud accounting, apps, and app advisory.
Hello everybody, my name is Matt Flanagan and this is another episode of the App Advisory Show. Now I've got an interesting topic and solution we're going to talk about, which is R&D. I've got Mike with me. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you?
Yes, thanks Matt. So I'm Mike Dean, I'm the MD of WhisperClaims. We're a specialist application for specifically designed for accountants to do R&D tax claims quickly and easily.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, R&D's always been whirling around quite a lot. I think it's got a little bit of momentum I've seen the last 3-4 years, and I know it's been around longer than that, and there's a budget, you know, allowed for R&D, and I'm sure we'll touch on that. But I'm always interested, like, where did the solution come from, or where did the idea come from? There's always a story behind a product, so I'm always intrigued as to what that is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem. Well, as I said to you just before the call, which I know raised a smile with you, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a software guy either, and I'm not an R&D guy. So it's kind of, how on earth did I come to be doing this? So I spent about 14 years prior to setting this business up as an interim sales director, working with a whole host of different businesses across different sectors, including technology and including professional services. And my sort of last assignment, if you like, in that role was working with one of the larger R&D tax specialist consultants. And my brief in that environment was the same as it always was. It was, you know, come in and get rid of all these salespeople. They're absolutely hopeless. We're not hitting our targets. And as was always the case with a brief like that, I got into that business and found actually that wasn't the problem. The issues in there were more to do with business process and some of the dynamics in the market as well. So a few sort of observations kind of bubble to the top. That's really early on, actually, in that engagement. One was this market's got a bit of a whiff of PPI about it. You know, there's a bit of a reputational thing in the R&D market. Lots of, dare I say, kind of cowboy operators, people pushing the boundaries or crossing the boundaries of the scheme. A lot of competition, so lots of noise out there in the market. Maybe a lot of kind of, let's call them sharp salesmen, cold calling, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you've got that going on, and then structurally some interesting things. So the majority of service providers are charging on a contingent fee basis, and traditionally charging really high fees for the work they do. That isn't really necessarily a reflection of the work that they're doing in putting those claims together. But that has a knock-on effect, so that particularly small claims tend to get turned away by those specialist providers because it's a contingent basis. Small claim, fee's going to be low. They'll turn away from it, and that's driven by a really high cost base. So you'll see a lot of the specialist providers talking about, we employ PhD scientists and engineers to do this work. Well, it carries a cost with it, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And that sort of creates all this behaviour, this kind of desperation, if you like, in the market. So we, you know, was sort of spotting all of this going on, chatting to a couple of colleagues in that business about, isn't it interesting? Surely there's a better way to go about this and deal with actually what is the majority of claims, which if you look at the HMRC stats, something like 70% of all claims are under £50,000 worth of tax benefit. And it's not much below that these specialists were setting that kind of fee limit, if you like. So all of that kind of came together as you know, three of us getting our heads together saying, do you know what, there's a better way. Why don't we start to look at it? And we looked at it initially as a project within that business, but the shareholders of that company didn't want to pursue it. So we just took that decision to sort of cut and run and go and do it for ourselves. That was in 2017, and we launched in 2018, kind of with, you know, a prototype product and a website. And here we are now. We've got 150 firms that we're working with nationally, team of 12. We've just actually broken through 2,000 claims through the platform. With that actually represents about £280 million worth of eligible spend. So that's something in the region of £80 million worth of tax benefit back to our customers' clients, which is amazing in the amount of time we've been doing this.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's sort of 2017, or that would have been purring along a little bit before that. 2017 becomes something. 2018, you start
We really
launching.
went live. Yeah.
Yeah, you went for it at that point. And you mentioned like the PPI, the PPI phrase really
Yeah.
tickled me as well, actually.
Yeah.
How have you found thinking or talking to people about R&D and trying to lose that type of badge it's got at the moment,
yeah,
or did
well,
have? I don't think it's got as much now, but certainly back then I would
yeah,
definitely think so.
So one of the drivers for us building the business we have, so we could have gone down the line of building some software that was for, if you like, direct selling to end users to space. And part of the reason we didn't do that was this recognition that accountants who are sort of sitting in the middle of that market, all SMEs are going to be working with an accountant of one description or another, and all those SMEs recognize their accountant largely as a trusted advisor. You know, and the first kind of protocol, we've seen it throughout COVID, haven't we? First kind of protocol, when they've got a problem, I'll speak to the accountant first. So we felt actually equipping accountants with the right tools and support was the way to go. And part of the reason for that was this thing about, well, I said it then, trusted advisor, you know, having somebody who's accredited, has got professional standards, delivering the work, would actually be a kind of filter, if you like, to make sure that the right thing was being done in the market. So there's a sort of whole host of things coming together there. But there's a downside with that as well, which is, you know, we're often in a dialogue with our customers, the accountants we're working with, where they'll say, you know, I've got a client who's come to me, they've been working with a consultant, they've come to me with this claim, or they've done a claim in the past, and it's clearly not eligible work. What do I do? They want me to do another, you know, they want me to do this year's claim. What do I say to them? And we find ourselves sort of acting as this honest broker in all of that.
Yeah, okay.
Telling people how to handle that kind of situation, how to navigate their way through it, which is all about, you know, being honest and making sure that you do the right thing for the client.
Okay, yeah. So I think there's, yeah, like you say, being honest and transparent and giving good advice in the best interests of them and the client. Brilliant. Okay, like you've mentioned, like solution and tools. Like, give us a bit of an idea of what your platform is and how people interact with it, and you know, as much detail as you can on that, really.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a cloud-based system. It's effectively white labeled, so whenever any of our customers are using it and they're sat in front of a client, it looks like their own software. It's not branded as WhisperClaims, it's branded as them. It's really quick and simple to use. It's a very structured data gathering process, if you like. You sit with the client, usually sort of face-to-face or on a Zoom call, or it can be used remotely, so you can invite the client onto it to work through certain elements of the system. You sit with the client, work through a series of structured questions that go to a lot of detail, but essentially using non-technical terminology. So as the user, you're not really drawn into HMRC language, you're not really drawn into the kind of depths of the technical detail, but actually the system's gathering that as it goes. So the output at the end of that meeting with the client is a report that's automatically generated from the system with very little free text, which might sound a bit odd, but there's very little free text in there. Generates a report that shows a breakdown of the eligible costs and a written report for HMRC. So if you think about it, that the majority of people who are not used to doing this sort of work, the big thing they're most afraid about when they get into this work is report writing, you know, and that's the thing that takes them time. You know, it's usually a sort of, you know, anything from a sort of 8 hours to 2 days worth of work writing up an R&D. You don't have to do that, it's a button press. So the massive benefit of using the system is you don't have to worry about generating that output at the end of the process. So as I say, written report at the end of the process, and then it's literally down to the accountant to take the figures from that, stick them in the CT600 and append the report to the CT600 and the job's done. So to sort of put some numbers around that, the process of putting a claim together in terms of elapsed time, generally speaking, is running into days, sometimes weeks, because of all of the interaction going back and to with the client. and you're doing it in a sort of longhand way. And in I suppose real work time, you're probably looking at a couple of days worth of work generally. The process I've just described using the app is about an hour. The majority of our claims are done in an hour with that automated report at the end. So you can imagine a massive time saving.
Yeah. And that report will give them all the information. Is that report, that output, is that for both client and accountant? It's like a joint document.
It is, yeah.
Giving you the output.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's probably worth just sort of throwing something else into the pot there.
Yeah.
But that's what the system does, in terms of generating an effective R&D report quickly and easily. But actually more significant than that is the effect that is having on the firms that we're working with. So the majority of firms we end up working with are looking for, almost put R&D to one side for a second. They're looking for a new service line. So they're trying to grow the firm, they're looking for new ways to generate revenue. And actually that's the biggest benefit of working with our software. It's a quick and easy way to generate new income from your existing client base. And we've got, in fact, we've got one customer I was talking to last week, who in his first 12 months with us, he generated 100K of revenue for the firm and 600K of tax benefit for his clients. So you can almost sort of put all that time saving stuff and that technical stuff to one side. That's the real benefit of using the system. Yeah,
and it's a win-win, right? Because there's a revenue stream for yourself. There's a structure, there's a platform to follow, there's output, which is all done for you. Yes, there's some other work to be done around that, I'm sure, but then also your clients are winning as well out of that. So like I said, that becomes the win-win, doesn't it? Which is brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. And we've actually just keeping it going on that client win. I mentioned earlier on, we've just broken through 2,000 claims having gone through the platform. Now that's our current run rate is about 900 claims a year, which is it's just over 1% of the entire R&D tax market by volume. So if the thing we're sort of most proud of with that is that we've equipped our customers to go out and win that market share and deliver that value back to those companies, which I'm blown away with every time I look at the numbers.
Huge numbers, brilliant return. It's something to be proud of as well, that type of return. Yeah. It's great. In terms of like the general awareness education of R&D for SMEs, is that in its infancy? Is that matured a little bit? I know when I'm going back to when you guys started, I still think R&D was still a bit of an unknown. It was heard a little bit of. We knew that HMRC had a budget and stuff for it, but do you feel it's moved on a little bit now, the awareness for SMEs?
It's an interesting question, that, because if I go back to what I said before about it's a market where there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people cold calling, and go onto Google and Google R&D tax. You'll see all the people who are sort of promoting themselves out there. So you would think that it's kind of plateauing in terms of awareness, but actually that's not the case. All those people are fighting over the people who are already aware, if the truth be known. So, we're talking to our customers all the time about clients of theirs who've never heard of it. And literally it's not, I've heard of it and I thought I'd come back round to it or any of that. They don't even know it exists. So I'm constantly amazed by that despite all that sort of market noise, there are still lots of SMEs out there who don't know anything about it.
I agree. I know some of the people, other business owners I frequent with, we all sort of know about it, but it's a very small number. I've been to other events where people thought, I did sort of hear about it, but I thought it was maybe scientific or something, because research and development sort of lends itself, the term itself lends itself to that world a little bit, doesn't it?
It's that kind of expectation. People say it all the time, but that kind of expectation that it's people in labs in white coats, when it's not actually that. It's much broader than that.
Right. Okay. I mean, well, just a bit more on the solution. Is it something which is more static, or are you constantly adding features based on where you're at? I mean, you're sort of 4 years in, I suppose, now to actually having a platform. Like, how has that evolved, and is there anything sort of on the roadmap? Like, what's your take on it now? Is it a stable platform, or does it keep moving?
Yeah. Well, so there's when you're running a technology business like this, and you're sort of managing the tech itself, there's two aspects to that. One of it is maintenance, making sure that the software works and is constantly up, and you're delivering against your SLA and your expectation of your customers. And the other bit is the bit about new features, and that is a constant part of our development cycle. So we've got in-house developers focused on this, 100% of the time. So in terms of new features, a really good example, it might sound a little bit left field. We launched a feature in January, first week in January, in partnership with a company called AddSum, who are a specialist alternative lender who lend against tax receivables in general. So they're able to lend money against an R&D tax claim where essentially there's no other collateral other than the claim itself. So loss-making business who otherwise couldn't borrow money from the bank, etc., they can use the claim to pull in some finance. So we've built a little feature into the app. So at the end of the process, when you put your claims together, your report's ready to go, you can click through to AddSum and make an application for funding there. So essentially, rather than waiting for HMRC to pay out, you can, I'll say instant cash, I'm exaggerating, but within a day or so, you can get access to the cash.
Still quicker than HMRC are going to pay you anyway.
Well, yes, exactly. So, talking about new features, that's the kind of direction we're going in. It's where can we add value to that process and help our customers to kind of really meet the needs of their clients. Another one that's maybe interesting to talk about, in the last 6 months or so, in a longhand process, we've been helping our customers with, we call it a claim review. It's essentially a risk review of their claim. So they get to the end of that process again, they might pick the phone up to us and say, will you just have a look at it before I send it to HMRC and just give me a view? And we just do a quick red, amber, green risk analysis on it. And it's our view of what HMRC's view would be of that particular claim. Now, we've taken the process that we use to do that analysis and built that into the system. So in the next couple of months or so, we'll actually have inbuilt functionality in the tool that'll give you that risk review. So right at that sort of tail end of the process, you can get an idea, is this something that actually I need to do some more work on it before I submit it, or it's not quite right, in which case you can then pick the phone up and talk to us, but the system itself will give you that feedback.
Right, so like you say, that sort of red, amber, green feel to it, and I think that's quite nice, especially early doors when you're doing this and you're a bit apprehensive as to what to do and how to go forward. As much reassurance is needed, I'm sure, of that.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, we have quite a comprehensive support suite around the product. So there's live chat in the app itself. We've got sort of inbuilt help in the app, so help videos and that sort of thing. Now, when we first built the product, you can imagine that we thought we were going to be building support for the app, so software support.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, that's not what our support is all about. So we help people with any kind of query question about the scheme itself, particularly about eligibility of a given client. So our support team are actually helping people with that, the kind of technical side of the scheme. I've got somebody, they've got this project, I'm not sure if it's eligible or not. What do you think? That kind of interaction.
Okay, so it's technical support, scheme support. Obviously there'll always be a bit of software support in there, but probably not as you thought it would originally be. Exactly. To the levels. Yeah, interesting. Okay, I ask this question every time about how you're interacting with accounting software and what that links, and you had a really good response on why it works for some and not for others, but I'll let you elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, we've got integrations with things like the Companies House database, with AddSum, that finance app that I talked about before. But we've made a conscious decision not to build any integrations with any accounting software to this point, which might seem odd when we're sort of 4 years in, but there's a good reason for that. If you think about it, if we had an integration with, let's pick on Xero, we had a Xero integration, and we're pulling in costs from Xero, what you would expect is that those costs have already been coded for an R&D expenditure. Now, the problem with that then is that somebody's got to think about that coding, and somebody's got to make a decision at the point that they allocate that cost to that code that it's eligible for R&D. So actually, in building in that kind of functionality, making the process more difficult than it needs to be. And just to kind of set a bit of context about that, there's two ways of putting an R&D claim together. One is what we call bottom up. So that's where you've got kind of deep insight into each project. You understand that you're working on R&D, you understand how to allocate these costs, etc. Now, the majority of SMEs don't work like that. So the sort of more prevalent way of putting an R&D claim together is what's called top down. So that's essentially taking all of your costs and all of your activity across the business and effectively taking it through a filter process. So a consultant doing this work will be sat with a client and interviewing them, taking them through a process to try and understand where does eligibility lie in this business. And that actually is what we're doing with our software. We're taking them through a structured process to figure where does eligibility lie right across the business. Now let's extract the costs. So we've built a system to make sure that that whole process is as simple as possible. And if we had those accounting software integrations, actually we'd be doing the reverse of that. We'd be making it more difficult and having too many people in that chain having to think about what's eligible and why kind of throughout the year, whereas we make it this quick and easy process at the end of the year to pull out the relevant activity.
Right. It's good. It's a considered decision not to go ahead, and there's good reason behind it, which is good to explain to people. And I didn't know the difference, to be honest, about the detail and the top down.
Yeah, and we have tools, within the app itself to pull costs in. You've got the ability to upload staff costs using a spreadsheet, for instance.
Yeah.
So we make it as simple as possible, but without going as far as saying, right, Mr. End Client, you're going to have to think about R&D every day because you're going to be coding these costs. That's not going to be helpful for anybody.
No, that makes sense. Fair enough. So from day one, accountants and bookkeepers have been who you've been working with, yeah? Yeah,
that's right. So we've got, right now we've got 150 subscriber firms. Actually, about 90% of them are accountants. The other 10% are consultants. So those specialist consultants, that kind of background that we came from.
Yeah, okay.
And we've got a mixture in there of people who are using us to do all the claims or choosing to use us for a subset of the claims. It's fair to say with the accountants, they tend to use us for everything that they do in R&D, whereas the specialists will use us for a subset of the claims that they're working on. Okay,
great. And like in terms of how do you find the engagement by this? So what I mean by that is it do you find that the partners that you've been working with a while, it was very much sort of dip their toe in the water a little bit, and there's a lot of hand holding to get them to have the trust and the assurance in the product and the outcome? And I suppose you're used to really helping them along that in the early days. Accountants, bookkeepers naturally risk averse, so we're into a world of doing this on your own can probably be a little bit daunting, really.
Yeah, and actually, in reality, I was going to say yes to that question. That they're all cautious, but actually that's not true. We have had a few that have gone, sort of stratospheric, really
straight in.
I think that's down to the prior experience that they might have had. So quite a number of our customers will have awareness of the R&D scheme, as in they'll either have put claims together themselves before, or they'll know that they've got clients who are doing R&D claims with third-party providers. So they've got a bit of an understanding of who amongst their customer base might either be making a claim or should be making a claim.
Yeah.
And they tend to be fairly quick off the mark because they know what that conversation is with the clients and they know how to kind of get moving. But then we have others who perhaps haven't had that exposure. They can see there's an opportunity, but they don't know what conversations to have with their clients and how to get going. And for those, we've got a training course actually that's all about the fundamentals of the R&D tax scheme that just equips them with that confidence to kind of get going and open up those conversations.
So what I'm hearing there is we've got people who are aware, been exposed to it in some sort of form before, and know it can get through, and will just take the platform and utilize it because they know the outcome. There's going to be others who've not had that exposure. You're there to hold their hand. You've also put some training to give them some basics on the conversation. I think when you start these conversations new as well, you're more concerned what questions are going to come back. and how to handle those, right? If you open the first conversation as your first R&D or any type of scheme, really, if you're thinking, oh, what are they going to ask me back here, which means you can be a bit closed in doing it.
Yeah, and actually, you know, some of the feedback we get from users is the quicker they can get into actually being in front of the client with the app, the better, because that's giving them the structure to take the client through the journey, rather than sort of taking ad hoc questions and get themselves into an uncomfortable corner. It's much better to just get into the process, and the whole, you know, the whole process is essentially gated. So, you know, at any point in the as you're working through the app, you can come to if you like, a hard stop. They'll basically say, there's no point in carrying on this conversation with the client because there's no eligibility there. So you kind of got that confidence when you go into it that actually, if there's nothing here, we're not going to waste our time because the system's going to tell me that.
Yeah. Okay. So you're dead right. The platform is going to take you through that process. So don't feel too concerned. Just make sure you use the script and the structure that's there, and that will hopefully allow most of your conversations. But you guys, like you say, you've got the technical support anyway to back it up, as well as the software support that goes on with that.
Yeah.
Okay. And just a general one, how have you found like building, like not being an accountant, not being a software guy, maybe spot an opportunity and taking it forward with a group of like-minded people with the right skills? Like, how have you found the journey of engaging in software and like a channel like accountants and bookkeepers?
I suppose two things sort of jump into my mind. The first one is really enjoyable, but the second one is, which maybe is a bit counters that, is it's hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
It's not easy, and you know, it's not easy at one level because, you know, we're trying to do something that hasn't been done before, or certainly hadn't been done when we entered the market. There are a few kind of competitors emerging, mostly focused on that end user space. They're not, they haven't built a tool for accountants, they've built a tool for end users. So actually trying to take something that's not been done and raise awareness of it is really difficult, because people are not looking for what we've got because they don't know it exists. So that's a real challenging thing. But we're getting there. It's hugely satisfying. You know, when I said about those numbers before, how many claims, more particularly how much tax benefit is going back to these businesses. When you see that, you know, you just get huge satisfaction out of it, and the whole team really enjoys being involved in that.
And also, when you can correlate those type of numbers to what you're doing, you know, it's very obvious how you're helping. And I think that sometimes you can't always see that with software. You know, it should save you time or it should save you this, but when there's actual a tangible something to it, I think it does make an absolute difference.
And that's an element of that tough part as well, that's not what people expect of software. So even getting that message across is quite difficult. You know, this isn't something that's just about saving time and cost. It's actually a revenue generator for your firm and a value generator for your clients. And what else does that is you know, another thing that's kind of hard to convey to people.
Yeah, it's interesting about your education. Like, people don't know what they don't know. I suppose there's two elements for you, right? People don't know about it, and it's like, okay, I need to have a think about this. And then you've got the people who do know about it, but do think of that PPI and cowboy scenario, right? So you've got
skeptical about the market.
Yeah, so it's like you've got the skeptics, and you've got to try and allay them, but you've also got to try and educate in the right way that this, you know, this is a good process and something you should follow, and it has good outcome if you follow it the right way. So yeah, I can appreciate that is difficult to do with that. So great. So if anybody is listening to this and wants to get in touch with you or partner up with you or become one of the people that work with you, like, what's the best way of sort of reaching out to you guys?
Best way is via the website. So whisperclaims.co.uk. There's a couple of ways of contacting us through the site. There's a book a demo button pretty much on every page. So if you want to look at the software, then you can find your way to that. There's a live chat functionality and a contact us form on there. So if you've got a more general question, do that. But certainly anyone who's watching this and have got a more general question, I'm quite happy to sort of field those directly. So that's just mike@whisperclaims.co.uk.
Brilliant, Mike. That's that's been pretty educational for me. I know a bit about R&D, but I didn't know a lot about your platform, to be fair, and I didn't know a lot about R&D outside of my world, to be perfectly honest. So it's been really good chatting to you, and I really like the sound of the platform. Actually, I really like the structure. It sounds like it's evolved quite a lot over the
Yes,
years.
absolutely, it has. Yeah, and yeah, it's been great telling you the story as well. To be honest,
Yes,
I enjoy telling people the background to this, as you can imagine.
I think it brings these products to life a little bit. So it's good to know that the history and where it came from. So Mike, thanks a lot for joining me today. It's been really good to have you on, and I'm sure you'll have some people contacting you about how they can work with you going forward. So thanks a lot, Mike.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt.
No worries. So guys, if you've been listening to that and you've enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I think on Google Podcasts, YouTube, anywhere that does podcasts. I think we are on. So go and get yourself on there, hit subscribe and give us a rating. That'd be great. But for today, that's it. Cheers again, Mike, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Matt. Cheers.
Cheers.